Hi, welcome back to my garden. Now, I'm not sure how this video is going to go. I normally make a pretty off-the-cuff, unscripted film, but this week is really taking that to ridiculous extremes. I have no idea what's going to happen or where this is all going to end. I've tried making the film a few times without much success. You might hear a sort of bird call intermittently. There we go, that was it, if you heard it. That is our local nesting hawks. Perhaps I was standing too close to their nest. I was certainly standing too close to a wasp's nest, so as a small wasp started to hover around me, pay close attention, I thought best to move. But I'm going to give it my best shot. I guess this film, whilst the chats in the garden have been me philosophizing, today it's a bit more like that philosophizing that you get at the end of a long session at your local pub. When someone's desperately trying to express something but wrestling with the words. So I apologize in advance, but let's see what happens. You might be wondering why I feel so compelled to make this film today of all days, if I'm so unsure, but really this is the last opportunity if I'm going to make a film this week. Tomorrow, Easter Friday, and my wife's niece's daughter's going to celebrate her birthday at our pool, which is a jolly good idea. So even if this film goes badly, I'll have chocolate cake tomorrow to console. Anyway, let's see what happens. Now, I've been speaking over the last weeks, perhaps months, about why we're not doing the things that we really want to do, the things that we like doing. Dare I say it, the things that we were meant to do. And I guess what I'm driving at with this series is that we might think it comes down to a lack of discipline or personal choices, but there are powerful forces at play, and to some extent we have been, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial, we've been programmed. And one of the driving forces is, I guess, I was making a case for this last week, I guess is consumerism. We get onto a treadmill of doing stuff because we need to earn money, because we need to buy stuff. And why do we do that? Well, we do need to buy stuff, that much is true. We need to pay the rent and the like. But if one imagines perhaps a car. Now, I've never owned a car, bought a car, I don't drive. That's a long story. I've told it before. I'll probably tell it again. But no, I've never bought a car. But many people buy cars, and then before you know it, they've bought another car. They've upgraded. The same is true of the phones that, like this one, our smartphones that I'm filming on, and clothes that we're wearing, and so it goes on. And in order to fuel this sort of rampant consumerism, well, we need a good job. And very often the thing that we dream of doing, that we want to do, is a fun job, but it's not a good job, at least not from the point of view of earning money. Now, it's strange, I say that, and for a variety of reasons, I ended up becoming a school teacher, which certainly isn't the obvious place to go for a budding little arch capitalist, a want-to-be millionaire. And as it turns out, it proved to be a fantastic decision for me. I mean, a lot of good fortune and so forth, serendipity, twists and turns, and I got onto the international teaching circuit, which turns out to pay well, and I've leveraged, not advantaged, that's not really the word. I've leveraged geographic arbitrage, and here I am, retired in my 50s in the northeast of Brazil, doing exactly what I want to do, living the life of dreams in the tropics. So things worked out rather well for me. But becoming a school teacher generally isn't the decision that we sort of make if we're aiming to make our fortune. Now, last week I suggested that perhaps I was far from that sort of idealist dreamer, completely unconcerned with money growing up. In fact, I had a different attitude towards money, and that perhaps it came from my parents. And I'd like to explore that a little more in this video. Because, I mean, certainly my parents weren't people who espoused those sort of values, who said you can't play with that sort of person because they're not good enough. They didn't look down on people who were less fortunate than themselves. I mean, quite the contrary. And I probably need to say a little bit about my parents, and perhaps I haven't spoken about this in great detail on this channel. Neither of my parents went to university. I guess my father came from a working class-ish background. His mother was a hat maker, milliner. His father, a sort of low-level civil servant, pen pusher. But I think he was a victim of the war. The end of the war, went to the army. University never really was on the cards for him, and he was a hard worker, and I think an intelligent man, and he did well enough for himself. My mother, on the other hand, had all the possibilities and the ability to, I suppose, study, but never made those choices. And I think she was always searching for something. She was a bit of an adventurer. Her brothers became doctors, twins, and she went to nursing college. Her father was a doctor, and perhaps nursing was some sort of gender-related thing, post-war South Africa. I don't know. That it wasn't an obvious choice for her to become a doctor like her brothers. Perhaps it was also she lacked confidence. I don't know. What I do know is that eventually she found herself traveling, trying to find herself. I met my father and settled down in England, and that was that. He was working for Pan American until things went horribly wrong for Pan American in the early 70s. He lost his job, and her lovely life that she'd carved out, and I guess the life that my father enjoyed in England was turned upside down. Unemployed, and mid-70s Britain was a bleak place, so they left, went to South Africa to seek pastures new and better possibilities. I was 7 when we arrived in South Africa. And I guess it wasn't a decision my mother really wanted to make. It was all fairly impulsive, and it was done, in a sense, out of fear. But in a way, my father, I think he was the driver behind this. My mother didn't want to go back to South Africa. It was sort of the place she'd left behind, that she was running away from. But I think he was maybe right that it afforded better opportunities for my brother and I growing up. And things worked out okay for us as a family. And growing up, there was a sort of despite that, the fact that things worked out okay, there was a tension or a disappointment. Now I'm wrestling with words here. I'm not sure what the right ones are. But in the circles my family moved in, well, they were basically my mother's family. And I think my mother always felt that people looked on her as a bit of a disappointment or a black sheep. And I don't want to say that we were treated badly by our relatives. Far from it. I don't want to suggest that at all. But I grew up with this feeling that especially my mother, sort of resented the fact that they, as a couple, were struggling, as she saw it, to make ends meet. And other people that, I guess, if I was to put it bluntly, that many people that she would have dealings with, who seemed to have very little going for them in the way of culture, they weren't well read, they didn't really appreciate the finer things, they appreciated expensive things. I mean, my mother had a lovely sense for quality. Persian rugs is a one place we could start. And my mother really resented that on some level. Perhaps my father less so. And the truth was that we did have a good life. My brother and I went to reasonably good schools. We stayed in a nice home. We had a swimming pool. And eventually my brother and I went to university and life worked out rather well. The point was not as well from a financial perspective and perhaps from my mother's perspective. And I'm looking in this video, I've been looking at things kind of through her eyes, I guess, as it did for other people. And that's not because I think my mother felt, or my father, that money was an important thing, an end in itself. But they created an idea that many problems and difficulties were because of a lack of money. And from an early age, my brother and I were taught, wisely I believe, to take money seriously, to be careful, to save. We were given a lot of very valuable lessons in that regard. And I'm extraordinarily grateful for that. But I think somewhere in amongst that series of life lessons was an idea that one of the first criteria was, in deciding on what you're going to do with your life, was having a good job. And a good job meant a well-paid job. Now, as always, this is sort of rambled on, and once again I've hit that 15-minute mark. So I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to have a little think to see if that makes sense. I'm going to listen to this video and actually last week's as well, and back to back, and try and find some sort of thread where I'm going. I guess what I'm trying to answer is a question about what drove my decisions and what's changed that process. So part 3 will be next week. Bear with me. I hope you stay for the journey, and let me know what you think if you've watched both videos, and let's start a conversation. Otherwise, trust your lives are filled with joy, and it's not that sunny. It is actually getting on. It's a little later than usual, but from a sunny Brazil. Ciao.